It's a really old castle. There's a lot of dangerous places within the castle. And if kids or adults go up there just to check it out, they're very likely to get hurt. And that's one of our biggest issues, public safety.
For many people, owning a castle is a dream they'd kill for. Only problem is, you'd need to sell 2 arms and a leg to even afford the down payment on one. But here's the shocking truth. Scattered across the world are castles on sale for only $1. Crazy, right? What's even crazier is that nobody wants to buy them. Why? 20. Kinloch Castle. Right now, one of Scotland's most extraordinary castles is officially on the market for just £1. Yes, you read that correctly. £1 single pound. Kinloch Castle sits on the Isle of Rum, a remote island in the Inner Hebrides. Built between 1901 and 1906 for Sir George Bullough, a wealthy textile magnate, this Edwardian mansion represents the peak of early 20th century luxury. When it was built, Kinloch Castle featured innovations that were cutting edge for the time: electricity, running water, even an air conditioning system. The castle has been slowly deteriorating for decades. The roof leaks, the walls are crumbling, many of the original furnishings and mechanical systems are beyond repair. The location makes everything worse. Getting construction materials and workers to a remote Scottish island costs exponentially more than mainland renovations. There is no regular ferry service. Supplies must be shipped specially. Workers need accommodation on an island with virtually no infrastructure. How come nobody wants it? Because buying the castle for £1 means immediately inheriting a £20 million restoration project on one of Scotland's most isolated islands. 19. Castello della Civile. Deep in the Italian countryside sits a fortress that has witnessed over 1,000 years of history. Castello della Civitella rises from the hilltop village of Civitella, its roots stretching back to the Etruscan era. Now, the Etruscans were around before the Romans, so we are talking about serious ancient foundations here. The castle itself took shape around the 11th century, though historians debate the exact date. Some say 1024, others claim 1026. Records from a millennium ago get a bit fuzzy. What we do know is this. By the 14th century, the ruling family expanded the castle to wrap around the entire village. Imagine living inside a fortified town where castle walls formed your neighborhood boundaries. Over the next 6 centuries, different owners added their personal touches. Fancy facades appeared in the 16th century. Decorative embellishments popped up throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. The result, a stunning mashup of medieval bones dressed in Renaissance and modern clothing. Today, the Italian state owns this architectural treasure. But maintaining a 1,000-year-old castle is not exactly cheap. The costs scare away private buyers, even though the castle itself is magnificent. 18. Castello di Montefiore. Here is where things get really medieval. Castello di Montefiore sits in a tiny hamlet called Montefiore just over 9 kilometers from Refranto in Italy. In Marche region, this fortress crowns a hilltop, offering sweeping views across the Musone and Potenza valleys. On clear days, you can see all the way to the Adriatic Sea. The castle's story begins in the 1500s, though the site itself has older origins. Back then, this was prime real estate for controlling trade routes and watching for invaders. The castle reached its peak in 1429, when builders added a central keep and watchtower. Throughout the 1400s, as popes and lords battled for control of Italy, the castle kept getting bigger and stronger. By 1445, it was basically impenetrable. By the 1600s, Castello di Montefiore started its slow transformation into a rural village. World War II did not help matters. Bombs and battles left the castle damaged, requiring decades of painstaking restoration. Even today, the structure needs constant maintenance to prevent collapse. That is why potential buyers stay away, even though the views alone are worth the visit. 17. Charleville Castle. Let's head to County Offaly, Ireland, where Gothic architecture reaches its absolute peak. Many experts call Charleville Castle the finest example of Gothic revival style in all of Ireland. The original mansion on this site dates back to 1641, built by Thomas More, but the castle we see today is something else entirely. In the early 1800s, Charles William Barry, Earl of Charleville, decided the modest mansion wasn't grand enough. He commissioned a complete Gothic makeover, transforming it into the towering masterpiece that stands today. The castle sits within Ireland's ancient woodlands, lands once sacred to the Druids thousands of years ago. But Charleville is famous for more than just architecture. This place shows up constantly on paranormal television shows. The first I heard was children running upstairs our bedroom in the middle of the night. Walked upstairs with a torch and followed the voices, and they stopped, and there was no one.
Ghost hunters love it here. They turn off all the lights, wander the halls with night vision cameras, and inevitably scream at shadows. Who wants to purchase a property known for supernatural activity? Right now, Charleville remains one of those places everyone wants to visit, but nobody wants to buy, even for $1. 16. Granite Loma. You've probably never heard of the world's most expensive log cabin. Granite Loma sits in Michigan's remote Upper Peninsula, a massive structure built from Oregon pine logs back in 1927. American businessman Louis Graver Kaufman spared no expense creating this wilderness retreat. The main cabin stretches over 2,000 feet, with ceilings soaring 24 feet high. The property includes 45 acres of pristine land and a full mile of private Lake Superior shoreline. When Granite Loma first hit the market, the asking price was $40 million. Let that sink in. $40 million for a log cabin. Unsurprisingly, buyers stayed away. The price dropped to $35 million. Still nothing. Then $25 million? Crickets. Eventually, it fell to $19.5 million, where it has sat for years. So, what is the problem? Sure, you get a pool, an orchard, a wind turbine, a wine cellar, and a hot tub, but the interiors are stuck in the 1920s. Everything needs updating, which means millions more in renovation costs on top of the purchase price. The remote location does not help either. This castle sits hours from any major city, making it impractical for anyone except the ultra-wealthy looking for an extreme hideaway. Even among billionaires, that is a tough sell. 15. Tiffany Castle. Kansas City holds an unexpected architectural gem. Tiffany Castle rises from the Pendleton Heights neighborhood, a Tudor-style fortress built in 1909 by Dr. Flem Tiffany, an ophthalmologist who fell in love with English and Scottish castles during his travels. He wanted to recreate that medieval magic on American soil. The result is a 4,200-foot castle perched on the bluffs, offering stunning views of the East Bottoms and Missouri River below. Dr. Tiffany spared no expense. He used reinforced concrete for the floors and roofs, carved solid stone from a nearby quarry for the walls, and incorporated authentic Tudor architectural details throughout. The original construction exceeded $75,000, an astronomical sum in 1909. While Tiffany Castle remains a beloved neighborhood icon, especially during Christmas tours, owning it is more burden than pleasure. The place is a historical landmark, which means any renovations require approval from preservation boards. Every repair costs more because you cannot use modern shortcuts. You need period-appropriate materials and techniques. 14. French Provincial Castle. Imagine finding a genuine French castle in the middle of the Bronx. This architectural oddity was built in 1926, a Tudor-style French provincial masterpiece, rising incongruously among New York City's urban sprawl. But here's where the story gets wild. The builder didn't just copy French architecture. He actually imported 30-inch thick stone walls from a demolished Croatian castle. These ancient stones traveled across the Atlantic via Italian shipping lines, presumably owned by the original homeowners company. The castle has been on and off the market since 2009, each time with a slightly lower price tag. Despite the price cuts, buyers remain skeptical. Why? Well, maintaining a castle in New York City is ridiculously expensive. Property taxes alone would bankrupt most people. The imported Croatian stones require specialized restoration techniques. You cannot just hire any contractor. But potential buyers see a property that is neither fish nor fowl. Too weird for the neighborhood, too expensive to maintain, and too quirky to resell. It's a white elephant wrapped in medieval stone. 13. Castello Alamanda. Here's a castle with one of the strangest origin stories you'll ever hear. Built in 1885 in Sagrado, Italia, Castello Alamanda started life as a clinic for electrotherapy treatments. Yes, you read that right. The Alamanda brothers from Trieste built this Gothic revival castle specifically to zap people with electricity as medical treatment. This was cutting-edge medicine in the late 1800s, even if it sounds absolutely insane today. The castle features a square plan spanning 3 floors, with a distinctive tower at the rear. The Alamanda brothers drew inspiration from nearby Miramari Castle in Trieste, creating an eclectic design that proudly displays the family crest at its peak. After the brothers died, the castle went through some dark transformations. It served as a military hospital during wartime, then later as a prison. Imagine being locked up in a former electrotherapy clinic. The psychological torture alone would be unbearable.
Today, the electrotherapy equipment is long gone, and nobody wants to buy a castle that shocked patients and imprisoned criminals. It just sits there waiting for someone brave or foolish enough to take it on. 12. Hearst Castle. This Ukrainian fortress played an unexpected role in Hollywood history. Built in the 17th century, Hearst Castle gained fame as a filming location for the 1978 version of The Three Musketeers. The irony is delicious. A non-French castle in Eastern Europe, doubling for France, simply because it was cheaper to film there. But beyond its cinematic cameo, Hearst Castle is a legitimate piece of European military history. The castle sits strategically positioned on the north side of hills overlooking the Styr River. Its fort-style palazzo design incorporates both stone and brick construction, complete with a moat and drawbridge. Everything you would expect from a medieval fortress. During its prime, the castle controlled a defensive position crucial for monitoring river traffic and trade routes. Vineyards surrounded the property, producing wine that was mentioned in contemporary poetry. That is how significant this place was. And let us be honest, geopolitical instability does not exactly encourage real estate investment. Hearst Castle is that stunning example of medieval architecture, but its location and condition keep buyers away. 11. Eltz Castle. Now we come to a castle that has never been destroyed. Eltz Castle sits in the hills above the Moselle River between Koblenz and Trier in Germany. Since the 12th century, this medieval masterpiece has remained in the hands of the House of Eltz, the same family for over 800 years. Let that sink in. The same family has owned this castle since knights rode horses and fought with swords. Even during the devastating 30 Years' War, when French forces destroyed castles left and right, Eltz Castle emerged untouched. The family's diplomatic skills saved them. The castle perches atop a 230-foot rock, surrounded on 3 sides by a river, creating a natural moat. The surroundings have been designated a nature reserve since 2000, protecting the ancient forest that has stood here for millennia. Different branches of the Eltz family own different sections of the castle, each part offering panoramic views of the valley below. So why is this castle on our list if the family still owns it? Because they have opened portions to the public, essentially admitting they cannot afford to maintain it alone. Castle upkeep costs millions annually. Even families with 8 centuries of wealth eventually need help. The Eltz family manages by charging admission and hosting events, but the financial burden never ends.
How come nobody wants it? Well, buying into an Eltz family legacy means inheriting both glory and debt. 10. Chillingham Castle. Welcome to England's most haunted castle. Chillingham Castle's reputation for paranormal activity is so intense that ghost hunters travel from around the world just to spend a night here. The castle has been home to the Grey and Bennett families since the 15th century, remaining in family hands until the 1980s. In 1981, the castle earned a Grade 1 listing on the Heritage List,
meaning it is legally protected and heavily regulated. Any renovations require government approval. You cannot just modernize the plumbing or update the wiring without jumping through bureaucratic hoops. But the real issue is the haunting. Numerous ghosts supposedly roam these halls. The blue boy cries in the hallways at night. The white lady haunts the pantry. Lady Mary Berkeley wanders lonely corridors. The dungeons and torture chambers are filled with residual energy from centuries of suffering. Ghost tours have become the castle's primary revenue source, attracting thrill seekers eager to encounter the supernatural. But would you want to live here, even for $1? Imagine trying to sleep while phantom children cry and ghostly ladies drift past your bedroom. The castle's fame as a haunted location makes it a tourist attraction, but an unlivable home. 7. Chateau Frontenac. Quebec City's skyline is dominated by one structure, Fairmont-le-Château Frontenac. This grand hotel was built in 1893 through collaboration between architect Bruce Price and the Canadian Pacific Railway. The 18-story building towers over Old Quebec's historic Upper Town District, commanding views that stretch across the ancient streets below. As one of the pioneering Grand Railway hotels, it earned designation as a National Historic Site of Canada in 1981. Chateau Frontenac essentially defined what a luxury railway hotel should look like. But this castle is actually a functioning hotel. You can book a room right now if you've got the money. So why include it on this list? Because the building itself has become so iconic, so historically significant, that it could never be sold to a private owner. The heritage restrictions alone would make any conversion impossible. It must remain a hotel, must maintain its historic character, and must stay accessible to the public. The operational costs are astronomical. Only a major hotel chain has the resources to keep it running. Individual buyers need not apply. 6. Kimball Castle. Let us talk about a castle that the government itself has condemned. Perched on a hill overlooking Lake Winnipesaukee in Guilford, New Hampshire, Kimball Castle was once the crown jewel of a 300-acre estate. Railroad tycoon Benjamin Amos Kimball built this mock medieval fortress back in 1894, importing granite from local quarries and materials from across Europe. The price tag back then? Roughly $50,000, which would be worth millions today. For years, Kimball used this castle as his summer retreat, hosting lavish parties and enjoying breathtaking lake views. But after his death in 1920, the castle's fate took a dark turn. The town of Guilford eventually stepped in and did something shocking. They condemned the entire structure as unsafe. Right now, the castle sits fenced off, crumbling behind barriers. The town issued a safety order demanding the owners either restore it, tear it down completely, or sell it. But for all the trouble, even $1 is too expensive. 5. Priama Castle. Slovenia hides one of the world's most spectacular castles. Priama Castle is built literally into the mouth of a cave in the country's south-central karst region. This is not a castle near a cave or a castle with caves underneath. The castle is integrated directly into the living rock, with portions of the structure disappearing into the cavern behind it. This unique positioning provided natural fortification that would be impossible to replicate today. Enemy forces attacking the castle faced not just stone walls, but the cave system itself.
Today, Priama Castle draws visitors from around the world. Its dramatic setting makes it a favorite for photographers, film crews, and tourists seeking that perfect fairy tale castle experience. But the cave integration that makes it spectacular also makes it nearly impossible to maintain properly. Moisture from the cave system constantly threatens the structure. Temperature fluctuations cause endless problems. Modern building codes would never allow such construction.
Potential buyers look at this architectural marvel and see nothing but maintenance nightmares. 4. Hauska Castle. Let us talk about the gateway to hell. Hauska Castle sits in the Leric region of Czech Republic, roughly 47 kilometers north of Prague. This early Gothic castle is not your typical medieval fortress. According to legend, it was built directly over one of the gateways to hell itself. The purpose was not to keep invaders out, but to keep demons in. The castle supposedly prevents supernatural entities from escaping into our world, confining them to the depths below. Construction took place in the later part of the 13th century, during an era when people genuinely believed in physical gateways to the underworld. The castle was built to seal that gateway permanently. Its primary function was never defensive or residential, it was metaphysical. Historical records show the castle did serve administrative purposes for royal estates, so it had practical uses too. But that darker purpose, that supernatural mission, has defined its legacy. Would you want to live in a place specifically designed to contain hell itself? Even if you do not believe the legends, the psychological weight would be oppressive. Every creak, every shadow, every cold draft would feel sinister. That is why this castle is left in institutional hands rather than private ownership. 3. Leap Castle. This fortress sits just over 5.5 kilometers north of the town of Roskria and about 10 kilometers south of Bur. The castle's history stretches back centuries, and every one of those years seems to have added another layer of supernatural activity. During its violent past, Leap Castle witnessed truly horrific events. A mass poisoning during a power struggle within the O'Carroll clan left bodies scattered throughout the halls. That was just one incident among many. As the years passed and the castle fell into disrepair, it became a genuinely dangerous place, both physically and, according to local belief, spiritually. This cursed room is haunted by the ghost of a priest who was murdered by his own brother during a family mass. But the real horror lay beneath. Hidden behind a wall, workers discovered a secret chamber filled with human skeletons piled on top of each other. This was an oubliette, a medieval murder device. Prisoners were thrown through a trapdoor onto wooden spikes below, left to die slowly over days or weeks. The bodies were never removed, just left to rot in the darkness. Thus, potential buyers stay far away. How come nobody wants it? Who would want to sleep in a castle literally built on top of a torture chamber filled with human remains? 2. Himeji Castle. Japan's largest and most visited castle should be a dream property, but it isn't, and for good reason. Himeji Castle is not just big, it's magnificent. The castle boasts 83 rooms spread across a complex that represents the finest example of Japanese castle architecture from the feudal era. The structure began in 1333 as a hilltop fort, evolving through centuries of expansion and reconstruction. During summer, especially around the Oban holiday, when spirits are believed to walk the earth, the castle becomes a hub for ghost stories. The most famous is Okiku's Well, the inspiration for the novel and movie, The Ring. According to legend, a servant girl named Okiku was murdered and thrown into this well. Her ghost climbs from the well at night, counting plates. When she reaches 9, she shrieks and the cycle begins again. The well still exists within the castle grounds, drawing horror fans and paranormal enthusiasts. The Japanese government maintains Himeji Castle as a UNESCO World Heritage Site and national treasure. It generates significant tourism revenue and represents an irreplaceable piece of cultural heritage. Nobody wants to buy it
because nobody can buy it. Sometimes the greatest castles are too important to belong to anyone. 1. Bannerman Castle. Bannerman Castle sits on Pellepel Island in New York's Hudson River, a crumbling ruin of what was once an eccentric billionaire's storage facility. Francis Bannerman VI, a Scottish immigrant, made his fortune in the military surplus business during the late 1800s. By 1900, his collection had grown so massive that he needed somewhere to store it all. The result was a unique structure that was part functional warehouse, part vanity project. Then, in 1969, a massive fire consumed large portions of the complex. The front and east walls eventually collapsed, leaving the castle in ruins. Today, the island is technically off-limits to the public, though it has become an accidental tourist attraction. The land, excluding the castle, might fetch around $3 million based on comparable Hudson River properties, but any buyer would need to demolish the ruins first. It is something nobody wants to buy, even for $1, and probably never will be again. Which of these castles would you want to own, and why? Tell us in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you in our next video. Amazing discoveries, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Share this video with friends, and join the discussion on what these findings could mean. Your thoughts and questions are important, so let's explore incredible mysteries together.